Kansas, and I have an uncle that lives in Kansas, so I called him and checked with him. He said, well, you heard that there might be a trip like that, but final details were not taken care of. But if they were, he would let me know. And that's how I found out about this trip. It was very popular. There were 39 people that actually took this tour, and they only wanted 20, but the reason it was so popular was because it included the Ukraine. Some of these people have been to Europe several times, checking out where the Mennonites lived here and there, but they had not been to Ukraine. That'll be most of the pictures that we're going to see today. Okay, let's see. Next. Oh, this is another question I was asked. This is the third time I'm giving this talk. Who are the Mennonites? People ask that. In the first part of this talk, I'll tell you about them. This goes back 500 years exactly. It is now 2013. Back in 1513, there was a lot of activity in Europe. In fact, in 1513, that's when Balboa came over, the Spanish sandwich ships, and they went across the Isthmus of Panama, and they found the Pacific Ocean. There was just exploration everywhere. Meanwhile, back in Switzerland, there was a huge monastery, and the priests there were getting together, and by the way, a lot of them, and this is Zurich, a lot of them had significant others, somewhere else in the city, were raising children, but they were priests there at the monastery, and they started looking at the Bible carefully, the New Testament. They wanted to be faithful to the New Testament, and they just started questioning things that were going on. And right about that time, the Pope was trying to really build up St. Petersburg, or St. Peter's, the church in Rome. He really wanted a spectacular place. Well, he needed money from everywhere. And all of the countries of Europe were really hit hard. And it was really hard on all these people. So that started making some questioning too. People were wondering, is all this necessary? And they started Bible studies in Switzerland there. And pretty soon some of the priests had their own following. Menno Simons was one of those priests, and his followers were then called Mennonites. This was all part of the Anabaptist movement. And the Anabaptists thought that the infant baptism was just not enough. A lot of the church things were actually taken over by the rulers. The rulers wanted things easier for themselves. How do you do a census of your people? Why not just say, well, you have to be baptized at church and write down everybody's name? It just seemed an easier way to do it. So that's why that was done. But to say that you should be baptized when you really know what's going on in your life later on when you're a teenager or an adult, this was off with your head. They heard about this. It was that these Anabaptists were pursued and killed as much as possible in very creative ways. So this is all in this beautiful town of Zurich, Switzerland, with a beautiful river going through. So let's find out that you're an Anabaptist. And there were people that would squeal on you. A favorite thing was to take women, put them in sacks, put them with rocks, and just throw them in the Rhine River going through. The tragic story that gets to me every time, and we have one person in this room who's heard this for the third time. She'll hear it. Gail and Margie here. But anyway, this couple were quite active with the Anabaptist faith. And so, of course, they were on the kill list. So the husband, he was taken off quickly and taken off his head. But the wife, they were going to really, she was quite the speaker. So they were going to really give her some trouble. And she was to be burned at the stake. And they knew how to burn someone at the stake. It wasn't just a quick death. She got a little toasted on this side, and this side, and this side. So they tried to make it as miserable as possible. Well, the two teenage boys their sons heard that this was going to happen. And so they wanted to be with their mother, encourage their mother by the side, at her side as she's being burned. Well, they came from a distance. They lay down for a nap. They fell asleep. They woke up. They thought, oh, we got to run. When they got there, their mother was just this oily little stack of ashes. And they just couldn't believe it. And then someone said, because she prophesied so, they used a tongue screw. Anybody know what a tongue screw is?
No.
Claire, you know? Yeah. Grabbed her tongue, stuck it out, put a screw through it so she could make noises, but nobody knew what she said then. So those two boys, they found where her ashes were. They dug through them. They found that tongue screw, and then that was a treasured item in their family all that while. And a frequent thing that we would say on our trip, all these martyrs, would we do that for our faith? Probably not, you know. It was just so very dramatic. So anyway, all this grief was happening in Switzerland, of all nice places. And the Schrags, my last name is Schrag. The Schrags, they were supposed to go to this one castle and be thrown in the dungeon, but that dungeon had a dungeon. So they were supposed to be dropped down there. And somehow, it's kind of like the movie Sound of Music. Put as much as you can on your back, put the kids on top, and just crawl over the Swiss Alps and get your life saved. And where could they go? Where could all these Anabaptists go? It included the Amish and Hutterites and many other groups too. Well, they went to like Holland or like Germany, France, and there were people, the rulers were always so smart, they knew these Mennonites were very good farmers. So they would invite them over because, you know, the 30-year war really devastated a lot of Europe. So why not have these hardworking Mennonite farmers straighten everything out? Then after about 15, 20 years when they had everything beautiful, oh, you'll have to leave now. So they always had to go again. And Catherine the Great of Russia invited many of the German colonists, not just Mennonites, but German colonists from other places too, because she knew they were good farmers. And Catherine the Great of Russia was German. And for some reason, she hated the Russian serfs. She thought they were all stupid, stupid, stupid. So she tried to get as many of the colonists as she could, no matter what their faith, but that they're German. They know how to farm the land. And so she tried to get them back. And that's about the early 1800s. That's about when my ancestors went there. And I've got a relative in this room. I should introduce her. Sharon Hansen here. She and I have the same grandmother. So Sharon is famous organist from Hot Springs, so she made the big trip. Thank you for coming, Sharon. So anyway, it's our relatives we're talking about. We like to call ourselves Swiss Germans. Now at Freeman, how many of you been to Freeman? Have any of you been to Schmeckfest at Freeman? Schmeckfest celebrates all three ethnic groups at Freeman. We've got the Hutterites, we've got the Swiss German, of course they're the best, you know, Swiss German, and we've got the Low Germans too, which are kind of like a lot of Dutch there. But they all tended to come over about 1874. Why did they come to America? From the Ukraine. Some of them had the good life there. They had worked hard, they're good farmers. They even had a lot of the Russian serfs working for them. Some of them even set up huge factories. They were doing pretty well. But this is what happened. There was a change in 1872 in Russia. All of a sudden they said, you Mennonites, you've had a good life. You've been living in your own little villages. You have your own school, your own language, your own churches. Well, from now on, everybody in Russia is going to be treated equally. And this is the big thing. The Mennonites did not believe in military service. Now, are all Mennonites like that? No. My brother was a Vietnam vet. So they're not all like that, but that was a traditional belief. You do not go into the military. During most of the wars, these Mennonite men would have to work like at hospitals or mental institutions. You know, there'd be some kind of work found for them, but they didn't have to fight for that. So, but anyway, 1874, a lot of them came over. Not everybody, though. And what happened to the ones that stayed in Russia? They had a pretty good life until the Russian Revolution. And it was just something. The Russian Revolution, and if you had any property, of course, it was confiscated, and you were either shot and killed or shipped off to Siberia. There are a lot of mines in Siberia, especially the salt mines, and that's where they had to work. And it was the early 50s, I saw an actual film of some Mennonites in some kind of mine in Siberia. And they were chained to wherever, and they had to do this repetitive work over and over and over. It was just so sad, you know. So I'm very thankful that my ancestors came over to America. And they came at the right time. Well, not really, because 1874, 75, 76, I think that's when we had all the grasshoppers in South Dakota. But they endured that somehow. Somehow they survived it, and they kept going. So, anyway, this trip I went on, Mennonite Heritage trip, it was very interesting. It was so interesting because almost all these people had ties to Freeman or Newton, Kansas. And we all looked alike. We exchanged, okay, who's your grandparent? Da, 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 da. We found out we were all at least fourth or fifth cousins. So we all looked alike. And the weirdest thing is we went to a place in France, I think it was, and it was a dairy farm. And all of a sudden, through the door comes this boy. He looks just like my brother's son. He looks just like Matt. I just could not believe it. Same red hair, same kind of little nervous mannerisms. Just strange. So, but I guess we all look alike. Well, I think I will start now with the slides. We're very thankful Phyllis here worked on these, and so did Brian over there. And we'll save the special finale. We're going to get those. The little girls are going to help with the special finale. Okay, I think I can just stand here. Okay, lights, please. Not good. Okay, get the light on. Yeah, no, I'm good. Okay, when we flew into Europe, we flew into the Netherlands, and I couldn't believe all the water everywhere. Water everywhere. And it was 100 degrees. We had a miserable crowded flight over there, 100 degrees. And our guide was very good. He's given us a tour many times, except not the Ukraine, but he's given us a tour many times. He's very good, but he didn't know where this hidden